Welcome, lords and ladies, back to the realm. I am your humble host, the Goat King, and today I share with you my explorations of the plane of air. All of this information can be found in the Rage of Elements book, and the mechanical details can be found on Archives of Nethys. Before traveling to any plane ruled by a fundamental force, it is important to understand the workings and nature of that force. Air is a force that rejects strict definitions. It is a force of change and freedom. Perhaps the most definitive trait of elemental air is the pride held by its truest denizens. Pride in their place of privilege, the plane between the universe and all the rest. Pride in lacking a defined place in the elemental cycle. And most importantly, pride in their contradictions. I said before that the plane of air is first of the elemental planes. It is a place of great open expanses, with islands of stone or ice, few and far between. The plane has the air trait, meaning it is filled with windy gales and breezes of various levels of turbulence. The air is usually breathable, and elementals of earth will find themselves most out of place in the plane of air. The plane also has the subjective gravity trait, meaning its down is determined by your will. With practice, you should be able to manipulate this to fly quite gracefully. Consequently, objects and mindless creatures simply float. As we move on to the denizens of the plane of air, I think it only fair to give their gods, or elemental lords, pride of place. Hashura, the Duchess of all winds, has ruled uncontested for some time, up until recent events. She is often considered the mother of all air elementals, though this is more a title of respect than it is a declaration of familial connection. Among her most favored and devout are the Fades, known in old lore as invisible stalkers. She rules from her Verglass processional, a palace made from shifting sheets of ice. The palace travels through the plane atop a storm vortex, its shifting floors always threatening to drop flightless visitors into the storm, a clear reminder of her contempt for any being not capable of flight. The Duchess of all winds does not ally with other gods, preferring to weave her convoluted plots alone. However, there are rumors suggesting some form of relationship with either Norgorber or Set. Ranganori, the Zephyrus Prince, was until recently imprisoned in the untouchable Opal. His freedom was won by a joint effort between the Pathfinder Society and the Concordance of Elements, both of which he now maintains a friendly relationship. In fact, other than rebuilding his home, the Roaring Spark, much of his time has been spent reconnecting with old allies and forging new connections. Speaking of the Roaring Spark, after the Zephyrus Prince resparked the storm at its center, his forces began the work of collecting and reconnecting its many islands that had been set adrift. While the work is proceeding at a reasonable pace, there are still many ruined estates, drifting and filled with both treasures and dangers. The Juthum Empire is perhaps the next most important entity or collection after the Elemental Lords. The Juthum are genies native to the plane of air. Sultan Zephyr the 38th rules the empire. His pride as an air elemental is reflected in his title, Lord of the Heavens and all the stars of the mortal void. This title references the many pinpricks of light within the plane of air, each a marker of a star in the universe. The capital city of the empire is quite grand. 7 islands of stone, ice, and silver, held together with powerful magic that also imparts a consistent gravitational down as well as a day-night cycle. The 7 islands each serve a purpose. The Cyan Keep houses the Juthum military. The Silver Sky is home to grand markets. The Luminous Court is dedicated to the creation and display of art. The Cerusian Ward is a place of gardens and vegetation. The god's ward houses temples to the divine. The high palaces compose the homes of the Sultan and his family, as well as the court that sees to the administration of the city. Finally, the Susurran Palace floats free of the rest. In my explorations, I've been advised to avoid making deals with the Jthum or their empire. But if a binding agreement is necessary, you would do well to know the allegiance of all who may be, even peripherally, involved. Also, keep in mind that the Jthum consider themselves to be masters of air. Use this to gain their favor. If you must make dealings outside of the watch of the Jthum Empire, might I recommend Port Eclipse. Hidden within a hollow island, this harbor turns a blind eye to pirates and smugglers of all types. The mayor of Port Eclipse is a sylph named Vendria. Dealings with her are never favorable, but the confidentiality required by Port Eclipse often provides unique opportunities. While scamps will never be considered any great power in a plane with gods, genies, and dragons, a whole nation of scamps is certainly worthy of notice. The sparkling Principality of Hautanzia is a cluster of islands connected by ice. This ice scamp nation is ruled by King Eshakar II. I would not recommend visiting Hautanzia, however, as they make it a policy to capture travelers for forced labor. More powerful and influential individually than any Jthum are the Anemoi Elders. In the universe, the four most senior Anemoi control the winds of the cardinal directions, north, east, south, and west. Less senior Anemoi of the universe power perpetual storms, like the Eye of a Bendigo, and maintain portals between planes. While the less senior Anemoi of the elemental plane of air still commonly work to maintain storms, and we will talk about one of those individuals, there are no cardinal directions for Anemoi Elders to claim. Instead, they control the types of atmospheric phenomena or specific types of wind. The flowing wind, Teleastes, controls the sky streams. The sky streams are great currents of wind that allow rapid transit through the plane. While they are constantly in flux, they can be reliably navigated with sufficient training. The rising wind, Circean, creates and strengthens storms. Their counterpart, the cleansing wind, Agrasthir, calms storms as well as closes portals between planes. Finally, the hidden wind, Cassathis, controls mists and clouds. The less senior Anemoi of note is Yanoclis. The Storm of Fangs is powered by Yanoclis. This extremely violent storm is said by some to be impassable, as it tears asunder any ship who dare its winds. It has raged for centuries, ever since Hashura's most trusted advisor left her court and took residence here. Shanaria was that advisor, but while she seems happy to give advice to travelers, including the advice to stay away from her storm, neither her nor Hashura will speak of the schism. As to whether this silence is a matter of pride or some secret plot, your guess is as good as mine. As a final note on Shanaria, she wants Yankelis dead. I don't know the reason for this, it's not yet apparent. It would be disrespectful of me to talk of the notable individuals and groups on the plane of air without mentioning the Cloud Dragons, even if they have been so secretive in their activities as to avoid even rumors of their names, plots, or whereabouts. Just be aware there are Cloud Dragons out there, but sometimes the notable individuals are the dead ones. Grazulk was an apprentice to the last Rune Lord of Greed, none other than Karzug, when he came to the plane of air to build his fortress, a place to securely guard all his treasures and magical studies. Of course, by now he's dead, and all his wonders are just sitting there, if only the fortress weren't inhabited by the descendants of the giants he kept as servants. Lastly, there are a small number of both Kizadars and Zuras, genies of elemental wood and metal, in residence on the plane, though their presence may be a temporary affair. Within the plane of air, there are several spheres of bronze and steel as large as moons, and apparently hollow. A Pathfinder by the name of Xenia Lin was studying one of these spheres when it cracked open, releasing Kizidars only just waking from some form of stasis. This coincided with the return of the elemental planes of wood and metal. Needless to say, Xenia is confident another sphere must have opened and released Zuras. So far, that is just a bold, if likely, theory. The open sphere is full of structures like buildings along its inside surface. Unfortunately, exploration within the sphere has crawled to a standstill, halted by not only traps but also a deep, instinctual sense of repulsion the sphere exudes. This has sparked renewed interest in the remaining closed spheres. Learning that the spheres may be hollow led some to attempt to scry on their contents. So far, they've all shown images of blood and teeth. Surely these images are defensive illusions, meant to scare away intruders. The idea that there may be elemental planes of blood or bone still locked away is ludicrous. Surely. There are several dangerous places in the plane of air left to talk about, but first let's discuss some useful resources for explorers. There are a total of 18 new spells, so I won't be exploring them all in this video. The one spell we will discuss is a ritual. Sky Signs is an uncommon level 6 ritual that requires 2 secondary casters, 1 day of work, and 300 gold pieces worth of materials. The effect lasts 8 hours. The spell writes a message into atmospheric phenomena above you. Unfortunately, it's hard to convey complex messages in this way. It is suggested, however, that some sky and stargazing cultures develop complex symbology specifically in relation to atmospheric phenomena. Maybe an Uruxi or air elemental would be able to more clearly communicate using this spell. The major downside of Sky Signs, however, is the cost. Unless you need to communicate to an entire country, there are likely better methods. There are 13 new items, most magical, that I will encourage you to explore at your leisure. But I do want to highlight a few. The Atmospheric Staff, an uncommon staff starting at 4th level, comes equipped with many of the new air-themed spells, as well as air-themed spells from Secrets of Magic. There's a new type of consumable item. Bottled breaths are magical consumables whose effects last as long as you can hold your breath. And as a bonus, they usually have a secondary effect when you release your breath. Now that you're a little better armed, let's return to those dangerous places. First, we have a whole category of place referred to as a dead air. Within a dead air, living things choke and airships fail to catch wind for propulsion. The most famous dead air is the Hungry Sea. This area butts up against a major sky stream and has swallowed countless clumsy ships. If you could safely travel within this dead air, you would be able to claim the treasures of the many ships cast adrift. The Night's Embrace is a region of the plane consumed by twilight and scattered with pockets of utter darkness. To the insult of air elementals, mortals have taken to calling this the Sea of Night's Embrace. But for all their indignation, you won't find many elementals in this region. Instead, it is populated by creatures of shadow, drifting undead, and pale monsters of immense size. I thank you all for joining me in this journey, but if you wish to explore more deeply, you will have to do it by yourselves. I must move on and begin my survey of the next plane, the elemental plane of wood. I have been your guide, the Goat King, and as always, travel with loyal companions.